Hello there, Star Wars toy fans. This is Jim Kelsey, and thank you for taking the time to stop by my YouTube channel. Today's video is more or less a continuation over the last one that I did on the 1999 and 2019 Jabba's Skiffs. And if you watch that video all the way through, you may have heard a comment by me that I wish that I had had pegs in these. When you have a vintage Kenner collector like myself, who has been collecting Star Wars since my childhood. I mean, I was 9 in 1978 when I began collecting the toys. To now, you combine that with a person that's built model kits all their life and customized many ones, made ones from scratch. That's a bad combination when you have a toy that doesn't quite fit your expectations, which this Skiff did not. It was a marvelous mold, but as I was trying to set up the figures for the last video, figures kept falling over, especially if you accidentally bumped the table. And it's something that I'd been wanting to do for some time since I bought the toy, but just never quite got around to doing it. And my son loves to have his action figures on the stand. I mean, that's one of his favorite things to do. And he's constantly having me drill out the holes in the newer Hasbro figures and the feet, so that way they can fit on the stand. So without further ado, I'll show you the customization that I did, and then if that's something that you want to do for yourself, I'll show you the tools to be able to do it. So I had the video all set up, and then it shut off because it took some time to get the figures all done. So I'm starting off with the figures. So here they are. These are pretty much all of the vintage Kenner figures that you would see on Jabba's Skiff, present on the 2019 Hasbro Skiff. And where they're standing is where I have placed the pegs. So we'll just take them off one by one. There isn't a peg back here. Now these guys tend to pull out the plate. Yep. It's a pretty good fit with those. All right, so how did I decide where I wanted to put the pegs? Well, a lot of it was just placement of the figures. And I looked at the space that I had and mapped it out based on that. So for example, these pegs here are not too close to the railing because the railing tips in, and if I had made the foot peg way back further, then of course the figure would be at an angle, so I wanted him to be able to stand vertically. So that was one of the considerations. The other consideration, like on these plates that are removable, is I decided to put the plates holes where the injection mold marks were. So both on this one and the larger plate. And then it's kind of fits in with the theme, and the placement was pretty good as well. So if you're curious on how to do this, I'll show you that in a few minutes, what tools to use and the product that I use. Now granted, you are customizing your ship and potentially ruining the value of it. In my opinion, I think this looks good enough that I think I could still get the same value for it. Not that I'm in Star Wars stuff for an investment, even though the vintage Kenner line is just through the roof these days, price-wise. I would not do any customization to those ships unless they were already prior damaged, like where I had to make significant restoration efforts to make it happen. But in this case, it's fairly new, and I think it's good enough that it would retain its value were I to sell it. So let me show you the tools that I used. So here on the table is what I use to make the pegs. And if you've seen my video on customizing action figure stands, it's a very similar process. So once you decide where you want to place your figures, then what you do is you drill your hole. And so you're going to need a pin vise. Do not use an electric drill like a Dremel. You will completely not only melt the plastic, but wallow things out larger than you need to. You need a hand drill, and it's soft enough to make it work. So I have 3 different sizes, so I start off really small, I don't even know what gauge that is. This probably is 1/16. This one, I believe, might be 3/32. And then we have our 1/8 inch rod right here. So what ends up happening is that this becomes a press fit in there. It's that drill bit is just small enough that I can twist this in and press it in to place. Now, the rod that I'm choosing to use is produced by Evergreen Scale Models. You can get this at Hobby Lobby very easily. Number 214, 1/8 inch rod. And this rod fits perfectly. Let me grab one of the figures in the feet of the vintage figures. Okay. Here we go. You can see it's stuck. Nice fit. And so it gives a nice snug fit. You'll notice that some of the figures just came off really easily because I round off the top with the files. Now, once you drill that out, then what I use, and I don't have this pictured here, is I use styrene plastic cement. So I'll put this in, set the height that I need it to be, and then just drip some plastic cement there. I use the liquid type Ambroid Pro Weld. Oops. So here we go. So this is similar to that. You can get this at Hobby Lobby as well. I like this stuff because it runs in between the surfaces. Or if you can't find that, this says Hobby Lobby on it, you can get this just Testors plastic styrene cement. And that'll melt that this rod here into there. And then what I do is you'll see this flattened surface, and Kenner did this quite a bit with some of their toys, like with the Sonic Landspeeder. If you take that apart, you'll see some melted plastic like this to hold in wires. And so this is a wood burner with a spade tip, and so you just press that down on it, flattens it out, and now it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so that's pretty much it for these plates. And the same thing goes for the plate on the underside here. So I chose injection mold spots right here and here, and I did one on this side and two on that side just to vary it out. Now, as far as the ones in the middle of the ship, it requires taking it apart to do this process. And so there are 10 screws underneath, and these two hold this back plate here as well as the engines. These two hold this entire rear frame on. This too is just a center portion that holds the flat surface here. I can't come up with the word right now. These are more or less keeping the plank in place, and then these also keep the forward part of the plank and this part of the hole in place. Now, I was unable to totally remove the top from the bottom. The center section does pull out, and so for whatever reason, that's got a pin in here, and it's a tight fit, really tight fit. So I was not able to get the nose piece separate, top and bottom. So, but the center portion does pull out. And just be warned, these pieces here and on the other side, very soft plastic like what you see here, and they are just resting in there. They're not glued, they're not press fit, they're just resting in there. So they will drop out in addition to this engine thing here. And so you got to put those back in when you disassemble it. So using a screwdriver, which you can get at Lowe's, it usually comes in a set of 6, you unscrew those and then pull your center section out. Make sure you keep track of all your parts so that way you can reassemble things back together. And then just the same process as using the plate there. So what I end up doing is just creating that post, shoving it through there, and then I will take once I get that heated down, I will take the file, and this happens to be a medium grit made by Squadron. You can get these as nail files at Target or Walmart or any other store that you want, and then use a smoother file just to get it the top down smooth, and then round off the edges just a little bit. Now the paints that I use, I have 6 different paints that kind of create a combination of this grayish, brownish, olive drab finish that Hasbro chose to put on the Skiff. And so the paints that I'm using, as I mentioned, I'm a model builder. I've built lots of military airplanes, and so using camouflage colors. And so this is what I happen to have on hand that I use to mix with it. So I've got dark tan, strategic air Command Bomber Tan, which really is more of a green, so kind of like an olive drab green. You'll see this tan here. The have green drab, field drab, which has a bit more brown in it, dark gray, and then Gunship Gray. And the Gunship Gray was used really for the underside here, because that tends to be the color of the plastic that's under here. But everything else is sort of a mix of these colors. And so you start with a color that seems to work. You may want to start with the green drab first, and if you need to lighten it up just a bit based on how they painted your ship, then add maybe some dark tan, add some field drab, see what works, and in various combinations in order to match the color. But you can see that they weren't real perfect with it. I mean, here's the edge of the plank, and you can see this brown paint that they used on that gray plastic. So anyway, those are the paints that I ended up using on this. And the paints that I use are enamels. I tend to really gravitate towards enamels, having worked with both lacquers and acrylics in the past. And enamels tend to have the best durability over time. Yes, you have to use solvent in order to clean it up, but that's otherwise that's kind of the price that you pay. But I'd rather use enamels. Like I said, I've used them all my life, and I can tell you that on the models from my childhood, the paint is very difficult to get off. I mean, it does adhere over time. So that's of course my paint of choice. Choose what you want. If you're really into acrylics, then great. But you'll notice that they probably will wear off over time. And this is the whole purpose of the pegs. I mean, I've got this thing at an angle right here, and you can see that weequay is totally tilted forward. And that's the point of that, is to have your figure stay in place. So I hope you found this this video useful. Put a thumbs up or a like if you enjoyed it, you found it educational, and enjoy the hobby. Take care.